Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Miles Gutierrez-Riley about Season 2 of The Wilds, which is premiering May 6th on Prime Video. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, PD. Excited to chat.
Oh, this is so exciting. I mean, it's pretty crazy, right? Because you get cast, there's all these announcements. We find out there will be an island with the boys. And now it's finally coming out. Like, has it hit you that it's finally coming out?
Honestly, no. It's like, yeah, obviously, like I found out that I was going to be part of this like in January 2021, I think, February. So It's been just constant, this rolling wave of like, here we go. And now it's here. It's like, can't even really process it.
Is it overwhelming? Just like, I mean, with The Wilds Season 2, it's so much more complex than this question because it's like a whole, like all of a sudden, you all join the show and boom, instantly like important, you know what I mean? But like,
I know.
Was it kind of a little overwhelming and intimidating joining kind of the sophomore season of a very successful Season 1 for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like kind of double-edged, right? Like it's intimidating because obviously the show sets this extremely high bar and there's this intense and very dedicated and very passionate fan base that you're sort of being welcomed into. There's sort of a bar that you're trying to meet. But at the same time, you've got this foundation that the women and the team established in 2020 when the show came out. And so you're sort of stepping into this well-oiled machine. And in that, I think there's a lot of benefits that come with that wouldn't have come if I joined a show that was, sort of just starting out.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things too, where, one of my favorite things about Season 1, I'm going to get in Season 2, is I really love the flashback components because I feel like the flashbacks are there to show there's a lot of kind of conflict involving a lot of, the girls and the boys before they were on the island and when they get on the island as well. So they kind of work as a tag team a little bit. What do you think about flashbacks and how they're used in The Wild specifically?
Yeah, I think the flashbacks are one of the most interesting parts of the structure of the show, right? They're providing context and fuel for these characters. And I mean, the actors as well, right? You've got this like sort of well fleshed out understanding of where these characters are coming from. And sort of honestly, just like in real life, like you're presented in situations where you're like, oh my gosh, I dealt with this, like a younger version of myself dealt with this already. And you're sort of reckoning with how am I dealing with it differently? Am I changed? Am I the same? What parts of myself have remained true to who I am? The flashbacks, I think, do a good job of just grounding these characters in real full-bodied people rather than just, people stuck on an island.
And people are going to see, we're not going to go into super big spoilers, right? But, Ivan, your character, has a flashback. And a lot of people on the island, there's certain characters like Tanner and Reed's characters and your character and Charles that like know each other right before going on the island, right? And it's like the flashbacks storyline for yourself and Kieran's character and Kieran, like Ivan and Kieran. I mean, it's very tough subject matter, but it's very important. So was that very difficult to was that an emotional kind of for you? Was it emotional of preparing for that? Because like it's a lot happening in that tough subject matter.
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, it wasn't tough preparing for it. Once I was in the situation, shooting the scenes, dealing with the matter, like pretty directly, pretty physically, it was like, yeah, I felt very, not real. You're acting, it's all pretend. It's lots of fun, but like.
You play pretend for a living. That's what storytelling is.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just part of the job. But it's tough. It's tough stuff for sure. Yeah. And I think, obviously that's like exciting to be able to dive into, more exciting than something that isn't so meaty, but some real, really lived, really honest feelings that come with dealing with that kind of stuff.
It gets intense.
It does get intense.
That's probably the most intense flashback of all the flashbacks, in my opinion. I mean, people will agree to disagree, right? People will see the show in different ways, right? I think out of all the flashbacks, that's the one that hits the hardest, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool, I think, to be able to deal with issues like zero tolerance,
Yes,
cancel culture,
yes,
social media,
yes,
Generation Z in particular, I think has such a unique relationship to those matters, those topics, and to approach them with less of a black and white understanding of what it means to deal with those kinds of things.
yes.
To be given a character that is like making mistakes along the way.
100%.
In those fields is it's tricky terrain, but
you addressed that so perfectly without like going into like big spoilers. Like, well done. Like that was that was perfect. Like we don't have to say anything else about that. Because I honestly think that, you know, it left season one kind of leaves it where, you know, there's a boys island, and then we kind of get thrown in for season two, and going in as fresh, you know, we saw like on social media and Instagram and like everyone's posting like all excited and everything, and you guys are doing interviews, right? But going in as fresh, I recommend people going in fresh as they can, basically. Like watch season one and just go right into season two. Do you agree with me on that?
I would agree. I would agree entirely. I mean, there's a lot of noise like all the time, right? Like, you're going to have your opinions. You're going to get curious. You're going to want to see what other people think. But I did a rewatch of season one before I watched season two. And I was like, I'm on the conveyor belt. You know what I mean? Like it just keeps going straight into it in a really nice, exciting way.
Absolutely. No, 100%. There's like I said at the beginning of the interview, certain guys on the island knew each other before. And there's the different kind of relationships a little bit. Like there's the best friends, there's the family, right? The stepbrothers, and then there's you and Kieran that are like, I don't know if we categorize as, you know, enemies, but like there's bad blood there, right? What's that like, kind of seeing all that? Because that's an interesting thing too. You guys are all thrown into this community where you kind of have to adapt, but there's all this like past tension and all this stuff happening. And, you know, people are going to be leaning more towards their friends, and people are going to be leaning towards getting like away from their enemies. Like that's such an interesting dynamic, right?
Yeah, I think the writers do a really good job of making sure that each relationship is not two-dimensional in any way. Yeah. So although you do have the friends, you have the enemies, you have the brothers, like every relationship still has its own nuances and sort of intricacies that still make it an active dynamic on the island as they're presented with situations.
You know? Absolutely. No, it's so great to see. Is it interesting too to see how, you know, again, like getting back to like I interviewed Sophia Liu Pespat about this too. I remember like watching season one of the Wilds a couple of months later, right? And I remember like reading an article about how it was a social experiment. And I was like a little bummed. I was like, oh, can you imagine just watching the Wilds like fresh, like season one, not knowing anything? What would that be like? Can you imagine that?
Well, I did it. I mean, I watched season one, before I was cast on the show, and I was like, oh man.
Did you know anything? Because I'm just saying it's around, like you said, with the noise, it's so hard to like avoid spoilers and stuff. But did you know the storyline about the social experiment?
Not when I watched season one.
Ooh.
No.
So what was that like? Was that crazy?
I mean, I got to the end of episode one and I was like, what? The twist.
So I remember like there was like a guy on the radio talking about like recommendations for TV, and he's like, you got to watch The Wilds on Prime. You know, it's really interesting. You know, plane crash with some girls, but they're there for a reason. It's not your typical plane crash. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I know. I know. Although it is, it's 2 years later. Hopefully people have watched it before all the noise was out, before all the spoilers were out.
What was your favorite part about kind of filming a lot of the scenes on the island specifically, with all the characters and all the different kind of personalities you all had to portray? I'm just curious about that a little bit.
I mean, when you're transported to Australia and you don't really know these people, obviously you're hanging out outside of shooting, but while you're shooting, while you're at work, while you're in the characters is when you're really getting to know your castmates. And to me, the most interesting part of shooting was like watching our real life friendships unfold through the acting, through the performance, through the scenes. I would say we got very close. You know, you're there for hours a day, just like under the sun, by the beach, pretty extreme circumstances. So like friendships are going to form that are pretty tight. It was
playing frisbee might or might not. They may have to wait and see.
maybe.
No, it's so great.
Yeah.
What are you hoping they get out of it when they get to watch season 2? Because I know season 1, like it's the Wilds, but like they're different. Like there's a lot happening. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious. Takeaway wise, what are you hoping they get out of it when they watch season 2 of the Wilds, Miles?
I'm hoping. Okay, a couple things.
Yeah.
That's a good question. One, I think season 1 does such a good job of presenting the teenage experience as something that is really, I keep using this word, but multifaceted, right? It's really dynamic. It's really tricky. To present boys in that context as sensitive, as aggressive, as emotional and vulnerable, I think is a real big, strong takeaway for season 2. The writers did a great job of being like, here's the teenage boy experience. It's just as complicated as the teenage female experience. It's different. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're in contrast, but it's presented with a lot of care. So I hope that people take away a well-rounded understanding of what it's like to be a teenage boy. And also, I think that the show moves very fast.
It does. The pace is pretty crazy in this season.
It's like incredibly fast. And I remember we were watching season 2, we were like, this is like a drama at comedic pace, which is like, it's such an exciting ride. So I'm hoping people enjoy the fast pace of it.
Absolutely. Very quickly, because one of my favorite things though about like survival shows is kind of what we talked about, like the communal component, but the whole like you have to be a community. Like that was my favorite thing about it. You know what I mean? They don't know it's a social experiment, right? But is that interesting too, where you see like some of the characters come out of their shell a little bit and like are more like outgoing and have more personality than they would because they're kind of like, they kind of have no choice a little bit. Like I find that was that an interesting kind of exercise for you as like an actor? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Seeing these characters that like would never want to be stuck in a situation like that, sort of stepping up to the plate and being like, well, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm going to do. Like, yeah, it's an exciting surprise. And seeing the characters that you think are going to be the leaders sort of start to take back seats for different reasons, sort of be, challenged by the group for different reasons. It's, I think it keeps you guessing in a cool way.
There is a lot. Miles, thank you so much for coming on Popternative. It was so great chatting with you.
Yeah, great chatting with you too. Thanks so much.
Season 2 of The Wilds on Prime Video. They can check that out. Where can people follow you on social media to keep up to date with everything? Where people Instagram?
Gutierrez-Riley, yeah, Instagram. I'm on Instagram. Sorry.
No worries. This has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Miles Gutierrez-Riley, who you can catch as Ivan in season 2 of The Wilds on Prime Video, and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.